So there's one thing we know this morning for sure. The European elections are going ahead this month. Now, I've been covering British politics since 1983, and this will be by far the strangest contest I've ever reported on. The governing party, the Tories, have issued no manifesto, have had no launch. They barely seem to be campaigning at all. As taxpayers, we're spending well over £100 million to choose MEPs, many of whom hope never to take up their seats at all. And yet, if they do, their actions could change the course of European politics. We've got new insurgent parties on all sides who want to smash the familiar two-party system to pieces. This is all very confusing, I know, but it's also very important.
The Sunday Times Rich List is out this morning and it reveals there's now a record 151 billionaires in the country. Top of the list for the third time are brothers Sri and Gopi Hinduja, who work in energy, property and finance. The inventor James Dyson is in the list's top 5, while Topshop owner Philip Green has plummeted to 156th place and is no longer a billionaire.
Let's move on to the Rich List, which the Sunday Times publishes to great tantaras every single year. Grace, just talk us through the headlines there.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're talking about kind of discontent with our political elites. The Rich List again this year shows, I think, a big reason that that's happened. So you've got a record number of billionaires, and I think it's often people forget the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. Counting the numbers to a million would take you 12 days. Counting the numbers to a billion would take you 31 years. That is there are, over 150 billionaires now.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, it's interesting because people just don't get that kind of the idea of the scale of it. And what's interesting about the Rich List again this year is that the big source of wealth there is property wealth, right? And obviously, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. We've got a massive problem with homelessness. And yet there are this huge number of people who've made huge, unimaginable sums of money from buying and flipping properties on the back of this bubble, basically, that was, supposed to stop in 2007, but it's actually continued to get worse since then. And this kind of activity doesn't create jobs. It's a simple transfer of wealth from one place to another.
Good morning. The former Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson has said that Theresa May's decision to hold Brexit talks with the Labour Party was a grave mistake. Writing in the Mail on Sunday, the former Cabinet Minister, who was sacked after a leak from a meeting of the National Security Council, described the talks as politically naive and destined to fail. A Downing Street source said Mr Williamson had been supportive of the Brexit strategy while he was in the government.
Front pages reflect what you've just heard. The Mail on Sunday has the interview with Gavin Williamson, the sacked Defence Secretary. Sacked Minister May has betrayed our party and he's attacking the talks with the Labour Party. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is all in the context of the European elections and the polling. The Observer, a poll surge for Nigel Farage's BrExit party, it says, sparks panic in the Tories and Labour. And when you see the numbers, you can guess why. The Sunday Telegraph has a very similar take on that and an interview with Nigel Farage inside. Brexit party beats Tories in general election poll. So going beyond the European elections, they're saying if there was a general election, then the Brexit party would be beating the Tories then as well. Now, there are polls all over the place, and of course they change day by day, and all the usual riders apply. Nevertheless, Madeline, if you look at the front page of The Observer, it's pretty dramatic stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a snapshot, but it's one hell of a snapshot. This poll is putting the Brexit party going into the next European elections at 34%, which in their poll is more than the Labour Party and the Conservatives put together. The Conservative support has plummeted to just 11% in the European elections.
That's astonishing, isn't it?
And at the same time, I mean, I think it's astonishingly high, but it's roughly in line with what UKIP were achieving, for example. So I think we know there is that level of Eurosceptic support. I think that perhaps the even more remarkable finding is the cover of the Sunday Telegraph, where we've run a poll showing that for the first time the Brexit party is edging ahead of Conservatives in national polling, so at a general election. And were this current snapshot to be replicated in a general election, it would have the Conservatives almost halving the number of seats that they have and the Brexit party winning 49.
Now, the government was always clear it didn't want the European elections to go ahead. Already it's beginning to look clear why. Damian Hinds, the Education Secretary, is here. Damian Hinds, can I start by asking you, only semi-satirically, whether you have noticed the European election campaign is on?
Well, I have. I mean, truth be told, Andrew, in previous European elections, it hasn't been the highest profile of political events compared to other elections. Of course, we just had the local elections as well, and a lot of us have been out campaigning hard in those.
Seriously, are you going to have a launch? Are you going to launch your campaign?
I'm not sure we need a launch. I mean, we've been very clear about the outcome that we want. We're leaving the European Union. We need to make sure we do it with a deal, but we don't actually want MEPs to be having to take their seats. We want people to vote Conservative. I always want people to vote Conservative, but I actually don't want these the people who are elected to have to take up position.
So no launch. When are we going to see your manifesto?
I can give you the manifesto now, if you like.
No, I'd like to see it on a piece of paper.
It doesn't take a very large piece of paper to say what our approach is. We want to make sure we leave the European Union, we do it as soon as possible, and we do it with a good negotiated exit deal.
I'm standing on the doorstep and I'm approached by a Tory MEP candidate. I might want to know what they want to do as an MEP if they have to take their seats, which they might very well do. There's a whole set of really big European issues coming up over the next few years, and without a manifesto, I have absolutely no idea what Tories will be standing for. Well, none.
Our plan is very, very clear. We should have left the European Union already. We didn't manage to do that because, yeah, you're right, by the way, there are lots of big European issues coming up, and that's one of the reasons it's important we have a close future relationship with the European Union, because we have a lot of interests in common. We have to work together, of course, on a lot of stuff. But that isn't about taking up positions in the European Parliament, because we're leaving the European Union.
It would be quite nice to know what your policies were, however. Given what's happening in these election campaigns so far, and you've seen the polls as well as everybody else, it's pretty clear why the Tory party didn't want them to happen. According to Conservative Home, a survey by your own Conservative Home, 62% of Tory members say they will back Nigel Farage's BrExit party at this coming election, and 40% of Tory councillors, elected Tory councillors, are also going to vote for the BrExit party. What do you say to them?
Well, I don't think anyone's in any doubt these are going to be difficult elections for us. That much has been clear from the very start. I mean, look, for some people, this is the ultimate protest vote opportunity. Actually, turnouts tend to be quite low in European elections.
But they've been very important
anyway,
politically.
and people do use it as something of a free vote. And I think, that's going to be even more true this time. I mean, actually, ironically, this is, in a sense, for some people, it is the second referendum. But actually, the important thing actually is to, if you want to cast your vote to say, I want to leave the European Union, do it now. And do it with a good negotiated exit deal, then vote Conservative.
If it's a second referendum, even some of your own MPs are thinking about not voting for you. Even some of your own MPs. If Tory MPs can't be persuaded to vote Tory, why should anybody else?
My encouragement is, look, we are a party which is very firmly determined to make sure we leave the European Union. We do it quickly and we do it well. And so I encourage people to vote Conservative. In fact, of all the different options that people have put forward as well, there's no shortage of them, at least 8 different ways that you could leave the European Union. They've all got their cheerleaders, but none of them have a majority. And the reality of living in a parliamentary democracy, and by the way, thank God that we do, the reality of that is that you need the votes in Parliament to be able to move forward. But there is some commonality of interest here. We do both need to get it done, because actually this isn't just about parties or individuals. This is about our democracy. It's about our system. And to repay the trust that people put in us, we need to get things done on behalf of our constituents. Any negotiated exit from the European Union involves a withdrawal agreement. So whatever we're going to do to move forward, actually we need to get through this phase.
Talks go on this week, and we can't prejudge them, obviously. But if they break down, there's no plan B left at all. Given the numbers, then you are completely scuppered as a government. You have no way forward at all on Brexit, do you?
Well, look, I hope the talks will find progress. But actually, I mean, there is a potential alternative, which has always been clear, that then the government would come back to Parliament with a series of votes to try and find a stable majority. But it is true. I mean, you're right. You need to have not only a majority, but a stable majority to be able to pass this legislation through Parliament. It's not just one vote. We've got to pass the withdrawal agreement bill through Parliament in order to be able to move to the next stage.
You've been a very loyal member of the Cabinet. There aren't many of them. But nonetheless, when you hear George Osborne say it is time to face reality and members of the Cabinet to tell Theresa May her time is up, don't you agree with him?
Look, I don't think actually this is about the position of the Prime Minister and the leader of the party. This is about the maths in in our parliamentary party and indeed in Parliament. So no one should be under any illusion that just changing the person in that position would change the parliamentary reality.
Let's move to your prime responsibility, which is schools in England. There's been a big front-page story on the Times this week, you'll have seen. Private schools very, very upset and very angry about the success of state schools in getting their pupils into Oxford and Cambridge at the expense of expensively educated private school children. And one head teacher from Stowe, I think it was, has described this as social engineering.
Well, I don't think that's an appropriate phrase. I don't want the fact that somebody hasn't had a private education, which of course is the overwhelming majority of children in this country. 93% have not.
You are in charge of a department which is in turn in charge of all the maths departments and the numbers across the country in the schools. Are you embarrassed that the UK Statistics Authority has written to you 5 times in the past 18 months complaining and worried about your department's use of statistics? Something serious has gone wrong, hasn't it?
Well, statistics obviously play an important part in our public debate, and it's good that we have the UK Statistics Authority monitoring these things. Obviously, you never want to be you never want to be the person who is criticised. Actually, I mean, I don't think this has been in the main about saying numbers are wrong.
All right.
Sometimes there's a complaint about the political and other
I'm
context.
sorry, this is serious. Dear Secretary of State, I am writing to raise with you serious concerns about the Department for Education's presentation and use of statistics, says Sir David Norgrove, Chair of the Statistics Authority. And he then lists a whole series of things where you've presented them wrongly. International comparisons of spending, Ofsted rankings, national pupil census, per pupil funding, national funding formula, and so on. This must be embarrassing for the department. Damian Hinds, thanks very much for coming in to talk to us.